So the key question now is which set of heads. I've got two sets of heads, both B series, 93 to 98 vintage. Make sure I'm not gonna fall off my. Still got it sitting on the cams. This one's got a head cooling mod on it, so it's sitting down on the cams, nose of the cams. This one's sitting on its back. This is a 93 Mark 8 head right here. And I did a little bit of port work on this. Definitely my first set of B port work. Mostly it was just smooth it up, try to take out the casting irregularities. And I did a little bit on the exhaust as well. I'm not going to show that right now. And mostly I was hoping to pick up port velocity, take the roughness out of the port and hope for increased port velocity. I'm not sure that's really true anymore, but. And then on the exhaust, I did kind of, you can see this exhaust is real squared off. I did kind of curve just a little bit, and I think that's probably a bad thing to do on exhaust. I think it definitely allows reverberation to come back through. So this is an unported set of heads. This is a very lightly ported set of heads with no chamber work. Neither of them have chamber work. This one, I don't think I can run the cams. The cams are a stock cam. I haven't looked up the part number, but it's probably just a stock 01 Cobra cam or something along that. It's not a 96, 98 cam. It could be a Mark 8 cam. I'm not sure. And then this is a set of comp. Some people call them stage 3 supercharger cams. I'm not sure the first 3 digits of the number, but I know the last 3 digits are 460. It's about one of the biggest supercharged off-the-shelf cams you can get. They're in very nice shape. This one's got beehive springs in it. This one's got stock springs. So let me spin this head around over here too. So the main reason I bought this set of heads here that I've never ran is this is supposedly an MMR valve job, oversized valves and valve job. And I would believe he said there was some light port work done, but I cannot find any. I mean, the ports look pretty well as cast everywhere. Even around the valves here. Get a pointer. And even around here, there's still pretty sharp edges. There's no smoothing around these valves. The one thing, I never would have bought them if I would have known this. There's a gouge in this head right here. The other one doesn't have that gouge. It's right on the edge of maybe where the fire ring is going to land. The fire ring is going to land right near the end of it. And then there's also a gouge right here. Don't really care about that one because the fire ring will go outside of it. That one is a little concerning. It doesn't feel horrible. It actually feels like it's raised up a little bit. I could just knock the edges down and debating copper sealant just in there because it's going to be super close. I think that fire ring is going to miss it, but I'm not guaranteeing it. So I'm trying to sit here and decide which heads to go with. Regardless, if I go with this set of heads here, the cams have got to come out of this head and go over here. Right now I'm probably going to pull a valve or two out of both heads and measure and double check this valve job before I do anything. Well, you can also see both sets of heads are 4 thread. These are older heads. Again, they're the latest to 98. Most likely a good bit earlier. I know that one's a 94 right there. It came out of a 94 Mark 8. And they've done well. I've put over 20 pounds of boost on that set of heads, and had no issues out of the spark plugs or anything else. So I'll set you down and come back here shortly. Since this set of heads is unknown to me, I'm going to spray some. I didn't pay much attention, but the cam on the downside doesn't have any followers in it. The cam on the top does. So before I take these cams out, well, this one's sitting all in the base circle, I'm going to spray some WD-40 down in here and see if it leaks any. Out the valves. Just sort of double checking the valve job. Since somebody could just hot tank these things and throw a set of valves in them and called them a valve job. You never really know until you do some double checking. Side. Got liquid down on all the valves. Let it sit on its side for a minute. And see. This cam here has got a lot of pitting. Main thing, with the adjusters pumped up, you don't really have any gap between your rollers and your base circles, so it's basically impossible to check. The other thing, before I take this other cam loose, I did check to make sure it's free. I already popped all the caps over here though. So I did turn it to make sure it turned good and free. I mean, somebody could swap the caps. You never really know when you buy stuff from other people. And I bought this off the internet. So it does look like the timing adjuster for the two that goes between the two cams on the bottom is really worn, so I'm going to have to replace that. Flip it up and see if we got any liquid showing. Maybe just a smidge out of that one. So that looks good. I'll go ahead and pop the caps and get the cam out. Not about it. These caps are honed after they're installed and then honed in the factory. So you got to make sure the caps all stay together and where they originally went. It appears they have some sort of assembly lube on this thing. I don't know why you would do that. I guess they were probably planning to rerun these cams. They don't look horrible. There's a little scoring there on the base circle. I don't know if this thing's focus worth a crap or not, but the backside's not bad, but the front leading edge, where it comes around and hits the roller, is pretty pitted. So it's almost like this thing was run maybe with the wrong springs in it or something. I don't know. Kind of. Yep. Can't rotate that way. That one's not as bad. I don't really care too much about where they came out of either. Because I really don't plan to run them. I've got a set of Mark 8 cams if I wanted. I don't mind using assembly lube. I'm not sure what in the hell they used. But I'll show you something real quick. See those oil passages for those cams look nice. That one actually doesn't have an oil passage. It comes over the top, I believe. Yep, see it comes out the side of that cap actually. It comes up from the side and over the same with this one here. It comes around on the end. Now look at these passages right here. They are absolutely plugged with something that acts more like a thick grease than a assembly lube. So again, even though it's new, even though somebody, it's funny that one side doesn't have it and the other side does. And you can see they sort of, I guess maybe they just did the one cam thicker than the other. The cam's got that goop on it, so might have been okay. You just never know. It's always good to look. So I'll pause here and get my spring compressor set up. Okay, finally got it. Pain in the butt. Not looking forward to doing 32 of those, I can tell you that if I have to. I have to either way, probably. So, pop the spring off. Put my other keeper over with my magnet. See if I can zoom you guys out. Alright, that's that. Pop my clamp loose. I'll bring you around and show you what I was doing here. So I just had a C-clamp in that port. Real light, not putting any pressure down, and using one of these bar type spring compressors, and it's just got that kind of a lever on it, and so the little notch fits under the bar and you just pry down. So alright, I'm going to turn the head up on its side and get that valve out. Okay, so the valve's definitely bigger. It pretty well calipers out around 1.475 on the OD. Let's see what the ID of the valve seat is. I'm kind of curious. So the ID of the valve seat is going to be 1.290. I'm not working inches. It's just, I don't play in millimeters. I know these are spec'd in millimeters, I think, but Have to back calculate. You can divide those numbers by 25.4 and get there. I will show one thing. B heads are known to have a horrible short turn radius, and for the most part they do. This valve, this is the round port, this is the square port. B heads are actually a mixed bag. The square port is a pretty poor short turn. The round port has a pretty decent short turn to it. The square port's a lot sharper. I might see if I can get that on camera here in a second. I need to go ahead and pull these springs, because if I want to swap cams over these high lift cams, I've got to swap the springs anyway, so I might just sign up for that big pain in the ass. I'll see if I can pull this valve next. Okay, it's actually worse than I thought it was going to be by a good margin. I didn't think it could get much worse. I mean, you can look down from the port side down at the valve, and it looks sharper, but I'll see if I can do it justice with this light shining underneath. There we go. So the round side's on the left, and it really does have a pretty good hooked over short turn, no sharp edge at all. It's real nice. The square side, and you can even see right here, this is much shorter. This is a lot taller floor. The floor of the port is a lot taller. This side right here is literally a sharp corner. I mean, it is just as shitty of a transition as you could have. Let's see if I can. You can see it basically comes straight down the floor to right there, and hard, sharp corner. And there is no transition at all right there. There's definitely some room to make some transition. Other than that, I wouldn't work this port at all. The only other thing I might do for chamber work, and I see why they probably didn't. You notice this area right here is laid back. It's laid back real nice. This side here is real sharp. I imagine that must be on purpose, because there's no radius here at all. This air is not going. This isn't going to be an impediment to valve flow, because all the air is going to flow around this upper corner. Air is going to overshoot this corner and start tumbling and doing funny shit, most likely. They do call these a swirl port head, so there is some airflow things going on that I definitely probably don't understand. At first I was thinking, I'll show it over here on this one. These valves help see it. You can see this corner laid back. You get a little bit of sharp edge there, but that's right up where the fire ring of the head gasket will be, so you probably can't lay that back. This is good and laid back. I was gonna just take I've got a couple burrs around here, just a good carbide burr, and just sort of lay this area back right here to help it round it off and flow a little better. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that or not. I might actually get in here and just try to cut this down a little bit and round it if I can. Since I'm gonna have the valves out anyway, that's probably the best case scenario. So you can see B heads, they're a mixed bag. You've got one good port with a nice short turn, and you got another port that's shitty. So I'll have to think about what I do from there. It's kind of aggravating because I definitely have to pull all the valves, swap the springs. I'm sure that head there looks just the same. I'm curious what the ID of this valve seat is compared to this, to see if I'm actually gaining anything. Because if you don't open up this area, it doesn't really matter that you've got a bigger OD valve in there necessarily. I think it can help a little bit getting air around the corners, but without the seat being opened up. And it looks like they did transition it in pretty well when they did the valve jobs. They just at least plunged it in so the seat and the head are even. There's no lip here or anything all the way around. It's just they didn't do any short turn work. So I do like this set of heads. Having the bigger valves, it could offer me more flow. I just need to check this other set and see what the stock valve diameter is between the seat. So there's a little update of where I'm at right now. I will so right now I've just got stuff stacked. The intake side had the followers in it, so that's where the followers are sitting on those caps. The exhaust caps are sitting up there. I've got everything stacked where the bolts came out and everything. So I'll probably get me a jug, like an antifreeze jug or something, to start stacking valves in. I've got the valves sitting exactly as they came out, so I can just swap them back over right now real easy with no big issues. But if I have to do port work and pull all the valves, I've got to come up with a better way to make sure all the valves go back in the holes they came out of. So probably going to call it for tonight and do some thinking about where to go from here. Okay, after a little bit of thinking last night, I went ahead and started cutting on these. I don't want to do a whole lot of port work to these, and I'm not going to probably, but I left this one here uncut so you can still see just how sharp of a corner there is there and how there's no radius. I've cut a radius into the other three, and it is definitely a lot better. It's going to be sharp just because that's the nature of these heads. And I'll pop this valve out real quick, and you can see the one runner on the left here has a real good radius, and then the bigger runner, the squared runner, has a pretty poor radius to it, but it's at least a little bit better now. I really don't think the other runner needs that much work. I'm not going for every last ounce of horsepower here, and again, I'm just sort of short on time, so I've got these three good and evened up in the way I like them or want them. I'm gonna do this last one. I'll show you guys cutting this one here. We'll show, I'm using just a normal variable speed drill. Tape the valve seat on the top because that's where the drill is going to get closest. Also cover the guide up so all the fine debris and chips don't get into the guide. And I can tell overnight that some WD-40 has leaked out of where I sprayed in here. It's leaked down to the bottoms because everything's shiny now. But granted, it took a long time for that to leak down there, so no steel on steel seal is ever going to be perfect. So there'll always be a little bit of leakage. So it's kind of wreaking havoc on my tape job, but I think it'll work here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one. And then I'm using a burr, a rotary burr. You can use, I've got these sanding things I was going to use, and I might still do that on another set of heads later, but sort of step you back and you can watch sort of how I'm angling the drill through here. See if I can get you as close as I can. Twist that just a little bit. Most all my work's in the bottom here. That's where it's the worst. A rough spot right there. Just got to be careful not to ding the seat. And that feels pretty good. Still just a little bit of a ridge on the back side. I'm kind of out of area. I do like this. It's just a little crappy drill. You can see it's got a plastic chuck. Granted, the camera doesn't want to focus real well. But in case that chuck gets up into the head, it's plastic, so it won't hurt the head. So, and it just by chance I didn't buy it with this particular purpose in mind. And I'll basically work that all the way up right to the edge of the valve seat right here. Looking in, I can still see there's a little high spot right here. Feels a lot better. Although looking at it visually, you can't see what I'm seeing standing back looking at the 3 that I already did compared to this one. And even this one over here on the far side probably needs just a fudge more work. Kind of eyeballing it. goal here is not to hog material. It's definitely just to do a little light cleanup, get that corner rounded over. Alright, I'm going to say that's done for this set of head. I still got the other head to do. Probably going to pull this one off the bench once I get all the valve springs pulled out of it. So that's that for the porting video. And again, these heads have such a large runner, you don't want to open them up real big. So the goal is not to hog material, it's to round and provide a generous radius as best I can. I'll show you the material that's been removed. It does cut out a good bit. Even though this is plastic, I am worried about these head scratches a little bit, so I'll probably find me a piece of cardboard to put down, and then I'll come back. And I did notice there was another scratch on this head right in this area right here. Zoom out, there we go. So I got a pretty nasty scratch right there. And a pretty nasty scratch right there. And if you'll notice, there's an arcing scribe right through there. So that's where right up next to the fire ring. So as bad as that scratch looks, and this one here it's hidden by the fire ring as well. And this one here, I was worried about it as well. But it will also be covered on the outside of the fire ring. So a lot of people would have taken the time and effort to strip this head down and send it back to the machine shop to have it decked again. Which, like I've said, this block's already been decked, so it's already pretty low. It's going to be aggravating to time the cams anyway. So this head actually doesn't need any decking because those scratches don't cross the fire ring. So really just a little bit of RTV or some copper spray sealant to seal those valleys up so that no water or anything, if it by chance were to get in there. This one here is a head bolt passage. That scratch leads to that one. That scratch gets close to a water jacket right there, mainly just to make sure none of the other fluids leak, oil, anything like that. So good head, ready to be bolted on the motor once I change springs and cams. I'm gonna go ahead and put the comp beehive springs out of this head and the cams into this head, I think, if they're both rights or lefts. I'll make sure I get the rights and the lefts together. But I'm gonna go ahead and put these valves back in place and then just set it back down and strip the springs. And then I'll strip the springs out of these other heads. So that way I don't have to, this is sort of how I store my valves. I don't have to have all the valves out. I really don't have to take the valves out at all. So I'm not going to if I don't have to. So that's that for the head porting. I'll get back to taking out valves here and springs, or taking out springs, not valves. found the best way is to push down the spring, use a pick to separate the keepers, and then use a magnet to get the keeper. I set the bar back and use this back notch just because it gives me a little more room. Okay, so that's all the intake valve springs. Now for the exhaust. To figure out my new setup.